From the moment I stepped into LeBlanc's shining lobby, with its marble floors and crystal lights sparkling above like frozen stars, I could feel the familiar prickle of judgment. The maître d', a thin man with a too-tight bow tie, paused. When I gave him my name, his gaze drifting from my simple black dress to the extravagant room behind him. He wasn't rude. He didn't have to be. His hesitation spoke loudly enough. "Park. Reservation for 8. I said calmly, keeping my voice steady and my eyes on his. "Ah, yes," he replied after a beat. "The Harrison party mentioned there. Guest would be arriving early." There. It was the tone I had heard for 30 years since coming to America. The tone that suggested my accent, my face. My history somehow placed me beneath the crystal chandeliers above us. I followed him through the dining room, past tables filled with New York's well-dressed elite men with gleaming watches, women in gowns dripping with diamonds. A few lifted their eyes to glance at me, some curious, some dismissive, most assuming I was someone's assistant or nanny. They never guessed the truth. People rarely did that at 55. I had learned to let their assumptions float right past me. My gray-streaked hair was pinned neatly. I wore almost no jewelry except the jade pendant resting at my throat, my mother's last gift before I left Korea. That pendant had stayed with me through everything. Nights of studying English until my eyes burned, years of working double shifts, building my business from nothing, raising my son David alone after losing his father. The Harrisons were already gathered at their long table when I arrived. Richard and Elizabeth sat stiffly, their perfect posture matched only by their perfect arrogance. Amanda, my future daughter-in-law, sat beside them, glowing in her expensive dress. 2 couples I didn't know were with them, all dressed for a night of wealth and theatrics. David rose immediately when he saw me, walking around the table with warmth that softened every line of my heart. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry in advance." I knew what he meant. "I had been preparing myself since the engagement, Mrs. Park," Elizabeth said with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How lovely of you to join us. We weren't sure you'd feel comfortable in such a formal restaurant." "Please," I said gently, taking my seat at the far end, the one they clearly chose to keep me at a distance. "Call me Sarah." "Ra," Richard repeated slowly, exaggerating each sound as if speaking to a child. "Tell us again what it is you do." David said something about banking. Before I could answer, David jumped in. "Mom runs one of those little cash advance places." Elizabeth's friend offered brightly, as though trying to help. "How entrepreneurial." I felt David tense next to me and squeezed his hand under the table. He had always been protective, always ready to defend me. But I had faced far worse in boardrooms and negotiations. This was nothing new. "Something like that," I said smoothly. The waiter came with the wine list. Richard waved a hand in my direction as though shooing a fly. "Perhaps something simple for Mrs. Park. Do they serve steak here?" "Actually, oh, Richard," Elizabeth interrupted. "Remember what Amanda said about her background? They'd probably prefer soju." She turned to her friends and added in a low voice, "Some kind of ethnic drink. Quite crude." David nearly crushed his water glass. Then Melissa, one of Amanda's friends, leaned in. "Speaking of backgrounds, we should talk about the wedding. Amanda, honey, do you really want everyone giving toasts? Some accents are hard to understand."
David
slammed his hand on the table before I could react. "My mother's English is perfect. She has 2 master's degrees. And no one doubts her intelligence, dear," Elizabeth cut in quickly. "We just want the ceremony to be perfect. Maybe your mother would feel more comfortable watching from the family table." No pressure to speak. The wine list returned. Richard reached for it, but I had already taken it. I read it with silent confidence, then looked at the sommelier. "The 2005 Chateau Margaux," I said. "2 bottles, please." Richard's eyebrows shot up. "That bottle is over. 4 bottles," I corrected pleasantly. "We're celebrating, aren't we?" Elizabeth's smile twitched. "Mrs. Park, please don't feel pressured. We wouldn't want you to overextend yourself." I simply nodded. remembering the mortgage refinance papers for their penthouse that had passed across my desk last week, papers from a financial subsidiary I owned. Though they had no idea. "Mom," David whispered quickly, "you don't have to. We'll take the caviar service too," I added, watching Elizabeth's face blanch. "And perhaps Mrs. Harrison would like to hear about my recent acquisition of Sterling Financial Group," Richard froze. "Sterling? That's impossible. They're our mortgage holder. The CEO is Sarah Park," I finished softly. "Would you like me to repeat it? Slower? With a thicker accent?" Silence hit the table like a dropped stone. But you said," Amanda stammered, "that you work in financial services." "I do," I said, sipping my water. "I also own the building you live in, and the summer property you're struggling to keep. And, as of last month, the bank holding both of your mortgage." David was trying not to grin. He had watched me build an empire from nothing and understood better than anyone why I let people underestimate me for so long. "Now," I continued as the wine was poured, "shall we discuss the wedding? I believe you had questions about my ability to give a toast." Dinner went quiet after that, uncomfortably quiet. Elizabeth tried to recover several times, but the shock lingered like heavy perfume. I wasn't finished. Not even close, because the real lesson I had saved for the next day, the morning of the engagement party. I reviewed the Harrisons' full financial portfolio in my penthouse office. Their desperation to maintain their perfect image had created a trail of bad loans, failing investments, and creative accounting. Pride was expensive and they were drowning in it. My phone buzzed. "David. Mom, they're trying to change the venue." "What did you do?" I smiled, remembering Elizabeth's face that morning when she arrived at the Grand Plaza Hotel only to find her reservations canceled, her event planner unavailable, and all her usual vendors mysteriously booked. Me, just wait. Real power wasn't about who you knew. It was about what you owned. At exactly 2 p.m. my assistant announced her arrival. "Mrs. Park," Elizabeth said sharply as she walked in, her designer suit doing nothing to hide her panic. "We need to talk about the venue. There's been some mistake." "Please," I said calmly, "call me Sarah." "And what mistake is that?" "The hotel claims our arrangements were canceled. We've held events there for 20 years. "Yes," I said gently, flipping a page on my desk, "under the previous owners. But as of last month, policies have changed." Elizabeth's jaw tightened. "Surely you understand, given your background, how important certain standards are." "My background?" I smiled faintly. "Do you mean as the new owner of the Grand Plaza Hotel chain?" Her face drained of color. "What? I purchased it last month, along with several other properties your family frequently uses. The country club, for example. I believe your membership is up for review. You can't." "Actually, I can." I slid a folder toward her. "And I can also review the creative accounting your husband has been using to support your lifestyle." Very revealing numbers. Elizabeth shot to her feet. "Are you threatening us?" "Not at all," I said smoothly. "I'm giving you a choice." Inside the folder were 2 papers. One was a complete financial audit ready for regulators. The other was a new engagement party contract. My hotel, my rules. "Why?" Elizabeth whispered. "Why are you doing this?" I thought of every smirk, every insult about my accent, every time they made my son feel embarrassed of where he came from. Because you need a lesson in humility. I stood and faced her. "The party stays at my hotel. You will personally greet every service staff member with respect. And when you announce Amanda and David's engagement, you'll do it in English and Korean." "Korean?" she stuttered. "But I don't. I've included a phonetic script," I said kindly. "Practice your accent. We wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself." Her hands trembled as she took the folder. "And if we refuse?" she whispered. "Then the society pages will run a very interesting story about the Harrison family tomorrow." I paused. "Your choice." When she left, David called immediately. "Mom, Amanda says her parents are in tears. What happened?" "Just making sure everyone feels included in the celebrations," I replied. "You're terrifying," he said. half laughing. You know that. I learned from the best people like them who taught me that power isn't about how loudly you speak, but about when you choose to speak up. The engagement party that evening was a masterpiece of subtle revenge. Elizabeth, perfectly coiffed but disciplinarvis, greeted buzzboys and waiters by name. Richard, usually holding court with his social circle, stood quietly by the bar, jumping every time I walked past. But the real satisfaction came during the announcements. Elizabeth Harrison, Queen of Manhattan's social scene, carefully reading Korean phrases off welcome. Her usual confidence shattered as she stumbled over each syllable. How does it feel? I whispered as she finished. To worry about your and being judged. Amanda, who'd been watching the evening unfold with growing understanding, approached me at the dessert service. Mrs. Park, I mean Sarah, she hesitated. I want to apologize for everything. I never realized. What? That the immigrant you mocked built herself into something bigger than your family's fading fortune? No. She looked down. That were the ones who should have been embarrassed. Not you. I study my future daughter-in-law. Seemed perhaps the first crack in her entitled worldview. Interesting. And what do you plan to do with that realization? Learn, she said quietly. Starting with Korean if you'll teach me. I want to understand David's heritage, your story. Well, I smiled. That's a start. 6 months later, I sat in my office reviewing the changes the Harrison family had undergone. Like any good investment, social rehabilitation rate, careful monitoring. Elizabeth and Richard had downsized to a more modest apartment, one they could actually afford. Their social circle had shifted, especially after the mysterious leak about their financial manipulations forced Richard to step down from several prestigious boards. But it was Amandoho had surprised me most. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Amanda entered, no longer wearing the designer labels that had once defined her. She carried a stack of financial reports, part of her new internship at my company. Sarah, I finished analyzing those mortgage applications you gave me. I gesture for her to sit, and 3 of them are from families like mine living by and their means to maintain social status. I flagged them for review. Shepaused. I also noticed they all serve on the hospital board with my mother. Interesting observation. And what would you have done in my position 6 months ago? Exploited their weakness, used it for social leverage. She met my eyes. But that's not why you gave me these files, is it? I smiled. My future daughter-in-law was learning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying people like your parents. It's teaching them to better, like you did with me. There was no bitterness in her voice, only understanding. You chose to learn. That's the difference. The wedding was approaching, and with it came an thirdist. Elizabeth had requested a meeting to discuss the arrangements. She arrived in time, humbled but not broken, exactly as I had intended. Sarah, she said, her pronunciation careful, respectful. We've been thinking about the wedding traditions. Oh, Amanda would like to incorporate Korean customs to honor David's heritage, but she swallowed her pride. We need your help to do it properly. I study her face, remembering the woman who had mocked my accent just months ago. And you're comfortable with that, having your society friends watch you participate in ethnic traditions. I deserve that, she admitted. But yes, it's time we showed people what really matters. The wedding planning became an unexpected bridge. Elizabeth learned to pronounce Korean terms without mockery. Richard, stripped of his financial prescience, revealed a decent man beneath the arrogance, and Amanda mom. David entered my office one evening, finding me reviewing wedding details. You did all this on purpose, didn't you? Not just teaching them a lesson, but showing them a better way. The best investments, I told my son, are in people's potential to change. Feuding day arrived. A beautiful blend of cultures. Amanda, stunning in both a white gown and a traditional hand batch, insisted on greeting guests in Korean. Elizabeth, her designer taste tempered by humility, worked alongside my event staff instead of ordering them around. During the reception, I overheard Richard telling his country club friends, my daughter didn't just marry into a successful family. She married into one that taught us the true meaning of class. Later, Amanda found me watching the celebrations. Thank you, she said softly, for not just destroying us when you could have, for showing me what real strength looks like. I touched the jade pendant at my neck, thinking of my own journey. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself what's right. As the evening wound down, David and Amanda departed for their honeymoon. Elizabeth approached me with a small gift. It's not jade, she said, handing me a simple box, but I hoped it could be a start. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with two intertwined ursals. For our families, he explained, different but connected now. I clasped it alongside my mother's jade, symbols of two journeys. One that had taught me to build power, and one that had taught me to use it wisely. I told Elizabeth there's an old Korean saying after a storm, the earth becomes harder. Perhaps the same is true of people. Shesmold, finally understanding. And families, especially families. Looking out over the celebration, my son and his Brit, the humbled but healing Harrisons. The merged cultures and learned respect. I realized that sometimes the greatest power isn't annowing someone's mortgage. It's an owing moment when they finally see themselves clearly.